S1.3 features nerfs to many of the OP champs from last patch, including Viego, Wukong, and Misfortune. Domination primary rune users will all be getting a nice boost in power as every single domination keystone is getting buffed. The attack speed cap is going up as well, and so much more, so we'll be breaking everything down and providing you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. And as a quick heads up, our subscribers are loving our new daily guides over at SkillCapped for the new season. Whenever our challengers and researchers find new strategies, builds, or basically anything we think will help you climb, we immediately create a guide and upload it that same day. This ensures you'll get challenger insights the moment they find them, no delays, and you get any questions answered too. We started doing these unedited guides to guarantee our subscribers stay ahead in real time, while the full force of our editors and script writers continue pumping out our premium courses, which take hundreds of hours to make, ensuring you get the best of daily uploads and our signature premium courses to guarantee you climb this season or your money back. Check us out right after this. So let's start off the video by looking at all the system changes and discuss how impactful they will be. Attack speed cap will be going up this patch from 2.5 to 3. This may seem like a really insane change, but we do have to keep in mind that unless you have a mass amount of attack speed, you won't even benefit from the buff. This means that in the majority of games, and if you're ending before you're able to get more than 3 items, it's unlikely you even benefit from this. Of course, in very late game situations where you're max build on an ADC who stacks attack speed, then you'll be feeling this buff, but it's just not something we're expecting to really shift the meta in a big way. We could be wrong though, so we'll keep you updated if that's the case, but our initial expectations are that the change shouldn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. The change, which could end up being the most impactful of the entire patch, is the buff to Electrocute. Riot's increasing the base damage of the rune by a whole 20 in the early game. The reason they're doing this is because Eyeball Collection was removed this season, and it's led to domination tree users losing a good chunk of damage in the mid to late game. Now, it's key here to realize that Eyeball Collection needed to be stacked up in order for you to gain value from it, so with Electro gaining damage right from the jump at level 1, you are actually stronger now compared to last season in the early game if you're a domination primary user. Mid game, you may still be a bit weaker, but without question, the early game kill power of domination users is up now compared to last season. Champs who can really threaten to all in early on in lane are the ones who we expect to gain the most power from this buff, so we're looking at LeBlanc, Fizz, Quinn, Akali, and Talon as champs who should gain the most relative power. Halo Blades is getting buffed with its attack speed for melee going up from 110 to 140%, while the cooldown of the rune drops from 12 to 10 seconds. Pyke, Shaco, Poppy, and Echo are the only 4 champs who have been running Halo Blades at a high rate in recent patches, so they'll look to benefit the most from this one. Something worth noting though for Pyke and Poppy is that Bloodsong is getting nerfed for this patch, so that definitely lessens the effect of this buff in regards to how much relative power they will gain. And then for the Dark Harvest buffs, the rune will be gaining 10 base damage, while the damage per stack is going up from 9 to 11. There's no ranged or melee limitations here, so this will definitely help out some of the struggling champs this season like Graves, Jhin, Elise, and Nidalee. Out of those 4, Graves actually hadn't been performing all that bad recently, so he likely moves back into a great spot for next patch. A few other champs who we can expect to gain some power from this buff include Karthus, Kha'Zix, Echo, Talia, Brand, Blue Kayn, and Teemo. Teemo is actually getting directly nerfed to this patch though, so he won't actually benefit from the buff much at all. Chemtech Soul is going to be getting stronger for this patch as the increased damage and damage reduction that you will receive when below 50% health is going up from 11 to 13%. Bloodsong is going to be nerfed for this patch and more heavily for melee champs as the melee damage amp is going down from 10 to 8%. The duration in which the damage buff lasts on an enemy is going down as well from 6 to 4 seconds. So this change should lead to a priority shift back towards either Solstice Slay or Celestial Opposition for melee engaged supports. In the higher brackets of play as of late, we have been seeing Bloodsong a ton on picks like Rel, Nautilus, Leona, and Tahm Kench, so these changes are aimed to shift those champs away from running the upgrade. Overall, we shouldn't see a shift in meta due to this nerf, as the champs who lose out due to the change are perfectly fine going for an alternative upgrade. Most players in the lower ranks weren't even abusing Bloodsong on melee engaged supports anyways, so this is definitely more of a pro and elite tier skewed nerf. Another item upgrade getting nerfed for this patch is Realm Spike, and we're definitely more confused as to why this one is getting nerfed at all. Bloodsong makes sense due to its high prio and pro play, but Realm Spike is only picked on mage supports, and the majority of mage supports aren't even that great right now. If the vast majority of mage supports were dominating the meta, then it would make more sense, but it's really only Karma and Vel'Koz who are powerful right now. The strangest part of both Bloodsong and Realm Spike getting nerfed is that it just means enchanters become indirectly better. Enchanters are already very strong in meta though, with both Lulu and Nami being 2 of the highest win rate and pick rate supports, so their relative power just shoots up even more for S1.3, as they'll both be in the support OP tier. So with Chemtech Soul getting buffed for this patch, one soul that will be nerfed is Cloud Soul. The movement speed increase from Cloud Soul will be dropping from 20 to 15%. The Voracious Otacon buff will not be as strong for for this patch, as the stasis duration after being killed with the buff is going up from 5.5 to 15 seconds. What a lot of players would do in recent patches, especially if they ran teleport, is just look for extremely aggressive plays with the buff, and then if they end up dying, they would just teleport right back into the fight. So it was basically like the enemy team had to kill you twice, which gave the team with the voracious buff a massive advantage. With 10 seconds being added on to the stasis duration, this heavily nerfs that strategy, and flat out inting to just get damage off on the enemies when you have the buff definitely won't be as viable anymore. The permanent buff that provides you with bonus gold on takedowns is also going to be lowered from 40 to 25. So definitely a decent chunk of power taken away from the voracious buff for next patch, but even with the changes, we don't see the priority on the objective becoming any less. Void grubs are going to become slightly weaker for this patch, with the structure damage dropping. Previous to this change, early game void grub priority had been higher than dragon, but it will be interesting to see if this change is enough to shift that. And for the final systems change of the patch, we've got a couple of adjustments to champion bounties. Riot has stated that the disadvantage threshold required for kill bounties to devaluate will be 60% less. Upon objective bounties activating, all shutdown gold will be suppressed for the losing team's members. This second change is quite nice, because what felt really bad in recent patches is when your entire team was inting, but you were doing very well yourself and ended up having a massive bounty on your head. Now, if your entire team is inting and the objective bounties activate, you won't have to worry about your bounty anymore, which is very nice, as you won't get punished as hard for being aggressive, looking for ways back into the game. So moving on to all the champion changes now. Starting with top lane, we've got Jax receiving 3 buffs for this patch. Mana regen will be going up from 7.6 to 8.2. Health per level is up from 100 to 103, while R on hit damage is being increased from 70 scaling to 170 to 75 scaling to 185. Jax has really been struggling to start the new season, hovering around a 48% win rate, so even with these buffs, they don't feel like enough to propel him back into a top tier spot. For now, we'll be leaving Jax in the top lane B tier. However, a push into A could be warranted if the buffs do land slightly more impactful than anticipated. We just really can't see S tier being in the conversation though as a result of these buffs. Nasus is another top lane champ whose win rate took a massive nosedive to start the new season, as his weaker early game just doesn't bode well for the feats of strength and Otacon priority. Riot's actually going to be buffing up his early laning power though by increasing the sustain from his passive, as lifesteal is up from 9 scaling to 21% to 12 scaling to 24%. So a 3% boost is definitely not nothing, but at the same time, it's not something that is going to make Nasus an S tier pick again. We are going to be giving Nasus a bump up the tier list, going from C into B, as we no longer see him being one of the weakest top laners, but there's still more to be desired from the pick. Quinn will be gaining a good chunk of relative power for this patch because she's getting directly buffed and will also benefit from the electrocute buffs. The direct buff is to her W, as the attack speed is going up from 28 scaling to 60% to 28 scaling to 80%. Despite W max being the most popular on Quinn in recent patches, it actually has had a lower win rate compared to Q max, so this change should help bring it more in line. Across all ranks in 15.2, W max was winning at 48%, while Q was at 50%. Quinn viability should actually be pretty good for this next patch, more so due to how well she'll be able to take advantage of the electrocute buff. 20 added damage in the early game on Electro is amazing for Quinn, as she'll be able to proc the rune off cooldown in melee matchups, and the bonus damage will really add up throughout the course of the lane. If the Electro buff hits really well, then there's a chance Quinn moves back into S tier, but for now, we realistically see her as a good A tier pickup. So Riot's looking to nerf tank Jace for this patch due to the build becoming problematic in pro play and high elo. However, it actually looks like offensive builds are getting weaker as well. Whenever there are changes to base damage that gets compensated by ratio buffs, it's interesting to break down exactly what this means for certain builds. Jace ranged Q damage will be losing 25 base at max rank. However, its bonus AD ratio is going up from 125 to 140%. So if you're going tank, this is just a nerf, but what does this mean if you're going for Eclipse and are level 9 as Jace with Q fully maxed out? Well, if we do a little math here, Jace should have 80 bonus AD at level 9 if he has Eclipse completed, has a Doran's Blade, and is taking both of the adaptive damage runes. So 80 AD with a 125% bonus AD ratio gives you 100 damage. If we add this to the base damage, Jace Q in S1.2 would be dealing 435 damage. Jump ahead to S1.3 now, 80 AD with a 140% bonus AD ratio gives you 112 damage. 112 added to the lowered base damage of 310 gives you a total of 422 damage. So what we find here is that even though the bonus AD ratio on Jace Q is up, the base damage nerf outweighs it on your 1 item spike of Eclipse. Now, what about on 2 items though? If you're going Eclipse into Manamune, here's what the calculations look like. You'll have 148 bonus AD from items, so for last patch, this would equate to 184 bonus damage plus the 335 base, which gives you 519 damage total. For S1.3, the 148 bonus AD multiplied by the 140% bonus AD ratio gives you 207 damage, and when added to the 310 base, you get 517 damage. So even on on your 2-item offensive spike for S1.3, regardless of what build you run for Jace, the champion will still be weaker than before. Jace will be receiving the same treatment to his melee Q damage with base damage down and bonus AD ratio up, while melee W damage is just flat out nerfed, and melee R damage is losing base while gaining in ratio. Overall, Jace is not going to be in a good spot for solo queue for this coming patch. We were optimistic that these buffs would lead to a nice spike in power for more offensive builds, but even the offensive builds get weaker with these changes. The relative power of offensive builds do go up, but Jace's overall power level will be dropping regardless. So you will continue to find Jace rated at the bottom of the top lane tier list, down in the C tier. For the only other top laner getting nerfed for this patch, we have Teemo, and his change is much easier to digest than the ones to Jace. It's just Teemo's base damage on E that will be lowered, as it's going from 14 scaling to 66 to 9 scaling to 65. So you're losing 5 base damage in the early game, which on paper seems quite significant. If Q max was more popular than E max, this would end up as a pretty hard nerf, but that's not the case. It's only 1 damage off at max rank, and since you do max your E out first on Teemo, the nerf shouldn't end up being too detrimental. Level 9, you really won't feel anything at all, so for now, we are going to be moving Teemo further down the tier list, as he will remain placed in A. So this is how we'll have the top lane tier list constructed for S1.3, with the OP tier featuring Warwick, Urgot, and Cho'Gath. Cho is moving up into OP for this patch, as he's one of the best tanks in the game right now. New season changes have been great for Cho'Gath, as his R has gained more value being able to secure Otacon, and he's just such a consistent pick in general, being able to get super tanky, but still having the ability to output a ton of damage. Garen bumps up into the S tier for this patch, as he's been loving the Swiftness Boots upgrade for this season, along with the addition of Axiom Arcanist. It's taken players a little while to catch on to how strong both of those are for Garen, but now that many have, his win rate has really shot up. Even after the buffs last patch, Evelynn has remained as one of the weakest solo queue junglers, so Riot has another buff lined up for S1.3. This time it's Evelynn's E base damage that is going up from 55 scaling to 115 to 60 scaling to 180. You max E out second on Evelynn, so when you hit level 13, 65 added damage on E is going to feel really nice. Electrocute buffs will also provide a nice indirect boost to Evelynn, so things are looking up. Considering Evelynn has been exceptionally weak though, changes likely aren't enough to really push her back into meta, so we'll be leaving her in the B tier for now, but could give her a push into A for the mid-patch tier list if the buffs land more significant. Blue Kayn will be gaining some damage on Q, with the base going up from 75 scaling to 155 to 75 scaling to 175. If this were for Red Kayn, buff to Q damage would be insane, but since Blue isn't consistently spamming Q off cooldown due to being more squishy and not having the luxury of really sticking in fights, it's not going to lend as powerful for Blue. Red Kayn will still be the more optimal way to play Kayn for this patch, as we'll be leaving Blue in the jungle B tier. Skarner has been absolutely dominating the higher brackets of play for a while now, so he's finally getting hit with a somewhat substantial nerf. Armor per level is going down from 4.8 to 4.5, while E stun duration is dropping from 1.5 to 1.1 seconds. Rating Skarner on the tier list is always more difficult because he's such a high elo skewed champ. For context, Skarner had a 54% win rate in Master tier last patch, however his win rate in Plat was literally 48%. Since we do skew our tier lists more so towards what's best for Diamond and below, we do tend to have Skarner rated a bit lower on the tier list compared to where many high elo players would end up placing him. So with these nerfs coming through, for the average player, there are going to be many stronger junglers to choose from, as Skarner is going to be placed in the B tier. Viego is getting nerfed for S1.3, and Riot's going the route of the classic base AD nerf for this one, as Viego's AD will be dropping from 60 to 57. In the past, what we usually see from these base AD nerfs is around a 1% drop in win rate, so we'll be looking for something similar with Viego for S1.3. A 1% drop still leaves him in a good spot for solo queue though, as we will only be lowering Viego's tier list placement from S into A. An OP tier jungler from S1.2 is being nerfed for this patch, as we have 2 changes to Wukong. W cooldown will be increased by 2 seconds at all ranks, while E bonus attack speed is taking a dive down by 5% at all ranks. If it were just one of the nerfs, then we'd be pretty confident in saying that Wukong would remain a top tier pick, but with 2 nerfs coming in, his spot as the best solo queue jungler will be coming to a close. So we're going to be pushing Wukong farther down the tier list, as he'll be joining Viego in the jungle A tier. So the jungle tier list has the most amount of movement for any role this patch, as the upper echelon will see quite the shift. It's going to be Diana, Amumu, and Nunu as the OP tier junglers, and one thing that all 3 have in common right now is that they run an AP Bruiser build with Liandry's as their rush item. The buffs to all the domination keystone runes likely do lead to a pretty nice boost in power for many champs, but it's tough to say exactly how much strength they are going to gain. So for now, we're not going to be preemptively moving picks like Nidalee, Gragas, Elise, and Echo up the tier list, as we don't want to jump the gun if the changes don't actually end up being that significant. One champ we are pretty confident lands in a powerful spot though is Graves, just because compared to many of the other domination tree users, he was super close to an S tier spot, and even if the rune buffs only lead to a 0.5% 65% win rate boost, that is going to warrant Graves being an S tier pick. For mid lane this patch, we have another round of nerfs to Cassiopeia, as her Q AP ratio is going down from 70 to 65%, while W AP ratio is down as well from 15 to 10%. Considering Cass has been overachieving above a 53% win rate lately, these nerfs are warranted, but they won't be enough to actually push her far down the tier list, as we're only adjusting her from OP into S. Galio will be receiving one nerf for this patch, as his base health is dropping from 632 to 600. Similar to the Cass nerf, we just don't see this one significantly lowering Galio's solo Q strength, so we'll be keeping him in the mid lane S tier for now. So mid lane for S1.3 is mainly going to be influenced by the rune changes more than anything else. As we noted when covering jungle, we don't want to jump the gun and move anyone up the tier list just yet, because it's tough to say exactly how impactful the changes will land. For our mid-patch tier list, which will drop next week, we'll definitely have a more concrete look at exactly how the buffs have landed and provide any update that we see fit. Champs who can really take advantage of the electrocute buff the most by consistently proccing it off cooldown are who should gain the most amount of power. LeBlanc is one who we are most optimistic about, especially in melee matchups. She'll be proccing Electro every time it's off cooldown, and that 20 damage boost will add up very fast. There's only one ADC getting buffed for S1.3, and it's going to be Samira. E attack speed duration is being increased from 3 to 5 seconds, so the extended fight power of Samira does get a bit stronger with this. However, the change likely doesn't matter all that much. How you're looking to play Samira in many skirmishes is getting your passive stacks up and then unleashing with R. It's not like auto-attacking consistently is how Samira is played, as after 3 seconds, you should be able to use your R anyways. We see this buff being more placebo than anything, and for now, we won't be moving Samira up the tier list, as she will remain in B. Miss Fortune is the one ADC who will be nerfed for this patch, as she's been really OP to start the new season. Armor is going down from 28 to 25, while armor per level drops from 4.2 to 4. The nerfs will remove Miss Fortune from being the standalone most OP ADC in the game. However, there's no way she falls out of meta due to the changes. We'd only see MF dropping as far as S tier, but for now, we will be leaving her in OP and just moving 2 champs up to join her. So with the nerfs to Miss Fortune, we're now going to have 3 ADCs at around the same power level on top of the meta, as Jinx and Twitch are moving up to join her. The attack speed cap buff will be one to keep an eye on for this patch, as to whether it boosts the strength of any ADCs, but for now, we're leaning more towards it not really mattering all that much. You have to realize you need so much attack speed in order to actually take advantage of the buff, and in the majority of games, you won't even acquire enough items to do so. Of course, if the change does end up being more impactful than we expect, we'll be sure to update you guys in our mid-patch tier list. Support is actually getting a lot more changes than usual for this patch, as we have 3 champs receiving buffs. Rakan will be buffed in 2 ways, as his W cooldown is being lowered from 16 to 14 seconds at rank 1, while E cooldown drops from 20 to 16 seconds at rank 1. So more early game strength for Rakan, but once you get to level 9, the cooldown of W is the same as before, so the buffs don't increase his playmaking power in the mid to late game much at all. It's not like you're really looking to use W or E immediately off cooldown in lane either, as they aren't poke tools, so buffs won't end up being all that significant. There's a chance Rakan could push up into A tier with the changes, but for now, we're going to be leaving him in B. Swain will be receiving 2 buffs for this patch, with his passive max health per stack being increased from 12 to 15, while EAP ratio is going from 60 to 70%. Very unimpactful buffs for Swain support, as he doesn't benefit from the AP ratio buff that much due to having a lesser gold income, and he's already in a terrible spot for support, so you'd think Riot would throw him more of a bone than this. So it goes without saying, but no push up the tier list for Swain this patch, as he will remain in C. So a support who's most definitely not in need of a buff is going to get one for this patch, as Thresh will be gaining 2 armor and his Q damage at max rank is going up by 20, while AP ratio on Q is up by 10%. So not the most insane buffs ever, but they will really help to solidify Thresh's spot in meta as one of the better melee supports, as he will be placed in the S tier. If you're looking to pick up Thresh with him being back in a powerful spot right now, our Master in Minutes course on our website can really help you out. Due to her recent domination in the higher elos, Rel will be nerfed as her base health is dropping from 640 to 620, and armor growth is going down from 4.3 to 4. So another change this patch that won't end up being enough to propel the champ out of meta, but will nudge her down 1 tier, as we will be moving Rel from OP into S. So for support this patch, there are going to be 2 clear-cut enchanters who are very high in priority, as we have both Nami and Lulu in the OP tier. As noted when covering the system changes earlier in the video, the fact Riot's nerfing Bloodsong and Realm Spike when it's enchanters like Lulu and Nami who are being picked the most right now is definitely an interesting choice. Overall though, the grand outlook on the support meta doesn't change much at all from last patch, as the direct buffs and nerfs aren't very big at all. There's actually a good amount of variety in the S tier for support right now though, which is what we want to see. Enchanters like Nami and Lulu are a cut above, but right below them you have mages like Vel'Koz and Zyra who are great. Thresh and Braum are 2 of the stronger melee supports, while Senna is in a solid spot if you're looking for more of a carry. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top-tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So that's going to wrap everything up for our latest update on the solo queue tier list. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.